Before we start this video, a large thank you to Flavius, Dimitri, Misha, Deefy, Cody, Kyle, and Jason for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello everybody, and today we're going to make it so we load all of the character files on our machine when we start the game, and we populate a load menu with those character profiles. So let's get started. First, let's go to our title screen canvas, and I'm going to create a new UI image. I'm going to make it the full size of the screen by holding Alt and clicking the symbol in the bottom right here, and then I'm going to make it just dark. You don't need to have an image here. I'm just going to do it so it covers the main menu so you don't see anything when the load screen is open except for the load screen objects. So I'm then going to create an empty under this. I'm going to call it load character scroll rect. And if you're not familiar with what a scroll rect is, we're going to be using one in this video. It essentially allows you to scroll through a selection of objects, and you can use a mask to filter the ones off screen out. So add a scroll rect component to this game object, and we're going to make a couple more objects under this. So let's go to the load character scroll rect, right click, and make a scroll bar as a child object of it. I'm going to change my scroll bar to vertical. I'm going to put it off the screen because I kind of don't want to see it, at least not right now. So I'm going to switch to vertical and do that, and now right where the scroll bar is, drag in the scroll bar under vertical scroll bar. This is on the scroll rect. And then let's make a mask. So basically all that does is you make this area the size that you want the content to exist in, and any content that would be bigger than the area just gets masked off screen, so it just does not appear. So basically it won't appear below this frame, meaning it won't appear on the edges of the title screen. So let's take the mask component and drag it into the viewport here. So just right there where it says viewport above horizontal scroll bar. Then let's make an empty game object below the mask for our content. Now the content should be bigger than the mask itself, because basically if you have 10 profile slots and maybe only 5 can fit on the screen at one time, the content contains everything but only 5 of them are shown. So drag the content into the content variable here in the scroll rect. And this should be working now. So let's just add a UI image here. And let's just design our first edition of the character save slot. So this is going to change over time as we add new variables and we add new things like the location and stuff. You know, the character current level, we can add that in later. But the first iteration we can keep simple. I'm just going to mess around with a width and height, so I think it's cool. I'm going to untick raycast target because right now it's not a raycast target. I'm going to change the color a little bit, and I'm going to basically rename this to save slot. Let's put a bracket here and put a 0, so if we duplicate it, the next one will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. I'm going to add an image. This will be the save slot icon, which right now won't be anything, but in the future this is where we're going to put it. I'm also going to untick raycast target again because it is not necessary. So I'm just going to drag it here to the left, and this is all stylistic preference. You know, you don't need to do anything that I'm doing here right now. I'm just making it look at least a little bit nice. So inside here I'm going to add a text mesh pro object. And I'm just going to say character name here in all caps. And this is going to change depending on the character's name on your save slot. So by default, if you see character name in all caps, then you know that it's not working because it hasn't loaded a character. And if it doesn't load a character, it should disable the game object. So character name is just going to be the default. You can leave it blank too if you want. You don't have to put anything there. I just like doing it so I can see how it looks in the inspector. Going to rename that to character name. I'm then going to, again, duplicate character name. And I'm just going to put time played here because we're going to add that real soon too. A tracker for the total amount of time you have in game. And I'm just going to put 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 here for now. So that looks good. Now, you can organize this further if you're neat freak like me. Add an empty game object. I'm going to call it layout group. And basically just make this however big you want the shared space to be for your name and time. So I'm going to hold Alt and stretch it the whole box and then get it away from the profile picture here so it's like this. And now if we add a vertical layout group and we change it to middle center, we can drag these two objects in here like that. We're probably going to resize them. Yes, we are. But now basically they're going to be identically spaced from one another, so it's going to be a lot more even. And I'm just a stickler for things like that because when you start getting a lot of little text objects in this, this box here, you want to keep them organized so it just has a nice aesthetic look to it. So I'm just going to resize these a little bit. You want to make sure ideally too that the width or height rather of these two objects are the same, unless you want the character name to be bigger, in which case you would make that a little bit bigger and then change the text size on the total time played. This is again all stylistic preferences and you don't need to do any of this. This just makes it look nice in my opinion. So let's go to the prefabs and let's save this save slot as a prefab. And now whenever we change the prefab, it will change everyone in the scene. So let's add a component to the prefab. Let's call this UI character save slot. I'm going to put an underscore after everything. I just do that with UI scripts. That's just my naming convention that I choose. So I'm going to delete the start and update functionality and put in my namespace as is per tradition. And then we can start writing some logic. So what do we need here? Well, we're going to need to access the save file data writer to basically check our machine for save slots. And depending on which save slot this is, 1 through 10, we're going to bind the save file to this slot. So next I'm going to make a header for the save slot information. So I'll just call this game slot. And right now all we have is our character name and our character slot and our total time played. So public character slot, and this will change depending on which slot this is. So right now we only have one, so this will be character slot 1 by default. Character info, this will be our name, time played, level, all that good stuff, potential location in the world, but right now all we have is name and our time played, so we'll put those in. I'm going to say using TM Pro up here so I can use a text mesh pro variable. And again, I'm going to call this character name. And I can call it character time played or just time played is honestly good enough. That's very clear. Okay, so we want to do something on enable because these aren't by default enabled in the title screen. They're going to be enabled when you open the load screen menu. So we can use the onEnable function, which, as you know, I'm sure, it runs whatever is inside of it when the game object is turned on. That includes if it's turned on and turned off and turned back on again, so it'll refresh itself. So load save slot is what I've called this function, and as it suggests, it's going to gather the information from a specific save file on your computer and then write data from that save file to the text mesh pro objects we have up there. So let's say save file writer equals save new save file data writer. We're going to say save file writer.save data directory path is equal to application.persistent data path. Now, we're going to do some code based on the character save slots. If you want to, you can use a switch statement. And instead of writing if statements, you can say character slot, and then you can do a switch for 1 through 10. This is perfectly fine, and in a lot of cases, it's nicer. But for legibility, I'm actually going to call this load save slots because it's plural. For legibility, I find in this circumstance, at least in my taste, I like using a chain of ifs because this is just a hard-coded set of character slots. And what I do is I comment save slot 01, save slot 02, etc. over each of them. So I'm going to do that, but again, if you would prefer a switch statement, go for it. Both work and achieve the same goal. I'm going to say if character slot is equal to character slot 01, then we're going to do some logic. We're going to say save file data writer, the variable, not the actual component itself, dot save directory path is equal to application.persistent data. The save file name is equal to, and then if we go back over to our world save game manager, you can see here we're supposed to have these names identical, meaning I could just paste this here like this, but there's a problem here now. If I make a typo, I'm going to break something. So instead of pasting this and just copying it letter for letter, which you can do, I'm going to change this function from a void, decide character file name based on slot being used, to a string. And I'm going to make it return a string, and that string is going to be the character file name. So I'm going to type string file name is equal to, and I'm going to initialize it at nothing first. And then depending on the slot, it's going to change the name. So instead of saying save file name, just say file name, as in the file name variable we just made. And then basically whatever asks this function to be called, we can just simply get the name from returning the file name. So I'm doing this so you can basically use this function wherever you want to get the proper name of a character slot. And I'm just going to say return file name. Now make sure wherever you've called this function, you're going to want to locate it, and you can't just call it now. You have to say, for example, in this script, save file name is equal to. So I believe we have it called 3 times here now on the script. So let's go to each, yes, we do 3 times, each individual time, and just say save file name is equal to. Now we can make this function public, and on the other script, we can basically just get our save file name by passing our character slot to it. And now the spelling will never be accidentally incorrect because it's just being taken from the same place. So let's say save file writer dot save file name is equal to, then we go to our world save game manager instance and we say decide character name or decide character file name based on slot, and that's private, so I have to change that to public. And then we want to just basically pass our character slot. And I'm just now realizing I didn't make it require a character slot, so I have to do that now too. So go back over here and make it require a character slot enum. Call it character slot. This is again going to break the code here because in 3 places now we need to pass a character slot, but this is really simple. make sure you change the switch statement to character slot, so it's using the one that we're requiring it to pass, not the one locally in the script. And now every time you see this function, just pass the current character slot being used, and that's it. Now, when we go back to the new function we just wrote, we're just going to pass the character slot that's on this save file game object, which we've made a variable for, which is called character slot, and now we're good to go. So now the name will always be identical to the names that it's set up on the World Save Game Manager, so no worries about typos. Okay, next we're going to say if save file writer dot check to see if file exists. So basically, if this file exists, let's do some logic. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take data from that file and we're going to apply it to the descripting objects on this game object. So I mean like the character name and the time played. So we're going to say character name.text is equal to world save game manager.instance.character slot 01.character name. We're referencing character slot 01 because as you can see above, we're checking if character slot equals character slot 01. Now, if the file does not exist, then we're going to say gameObject.setActive false. And that's it. So I'll make a comment here. We check to see if the file exists. And if it does, then we get the specific character data from the World Save Game Manager. Specifically, make sure it's for the proper slot. This is slot 1, so we're getting the name from character slot 01. And we're just writing it there, and that's it. And if it doesn't exist, we're disabling this game object. So when you go to load a new game, you only see the load icons for the profiles that are actually available or have been created. So let's save that, and let's go back into the game here now and go to the prefab view. Let's drag in the variables on the prefab and save it so that it automatically updates in the project. And now if I go to the content game object here, I'm going to add a vertical layout group. I'm going to change it to middle center. I might put it to upper middle later though. I think I'm going to have to. Spacing, I'll just say 15, and I'm going to duplicate this until there's 10. So as you can see, the vertical layout group just organizes it for me automatically, which is very nice. So there is 10 profile slots there. That's good. Now, we don't have a load game button. I'm going to rename that to menu, by the way, under the load character menu. Just a preference. You don't need to. And then I'm going to disable the parent object, which is load character menu. So we're going to enable that when we actually turn on the load screen. But first, we have to make a load game button. So let's go to our main menu options. I'm going to duplicate the new game button. And then I'm going to change the text on it to load game and change the name of it to load game. So I'll call it load game button. Okay, that looks good. And now I am going to go over to the title screen canvas game object. Actually, we're going to go back to the load game button object first under the title screen menu. And I'm just going to drag in the title screen menu game object here because we're going to make a function for that. Now you could just basically turn off the title screen by setting active to false, and then you could turn on the load screen by setting active to true, just like this, but we're not going to do that. So let's delete these two on-click events. What we're going to do is actually go to our title screen canvas script, and we're going to make one function. So all we got to do is make one on-click event that will do all that for us. I find that's a lot neater. I don't like having like 50 on-click events on a button if I can help it. So this again is just preference. If you prefer to do it the other way, then go ahead. It's still going to get you the same result. So I'm going to make a public void for open load game menu, and I'm going to basically make a couple variables here. So the first one, as you can see, is going to be called title screen main menu. I strongly encourage you to name your game object variables the exact same name as the game object that they are in the scene, just because in the future, if anything ever breaks and you have to reattach these things in the inspector, it's super easy to find them. I strongly encourage that. So the other variable I'm going to call title screen load menu, and the other one is title screen main menu. So if we're opening the load menu, then we're disabling the main menu, and then we're enabling the load menu. So we're going to say title screen.load menu set active true, and title screen main menu set active false. Now what are we doing next? Well, let's make a comment here, and we can actually just make one up here too. We're going to close the main menu. Let's keep commenting our code so it's nice and easy to understand. And then we're going to open the load menu. And then below that, we have a couple options. Like you could say, find the first save slot or load slot and auto select that button. That's a valid way to go about it. There's an easier way though, that will save you having to write some code for math. So we're going to do it that way. Let's go to the load game button first and drag it down. And I forgot to actually update the text on this. I'm going to do that too. Call this load game. Now I'm going to, again, be a stickler for organization. I'm going to make an empty game object. I'm going to call it layout group. And I'm going to make it the full size of the screen and then adjust it to a smaller portion of the screen. So hold Alt, hit this bottom right icon, put it back to the center, and then come right down here. So it takes up about a third of the screen. And then I'm going to put a vertical layout group on it. And I'm going to say middle center. And then I'm going to parent the new game and load game buttons on this layout group. And we're good to go. So the start game button is popping out up here. This is because typically these aren't enabled at the same time, so don't worry about that. So I'm going to adjust the ratios to the size. I'm going to uncheck the force expand and set spacing myself manually. I'll say 25, now 50, maybe 150. Honestly, just play around with it until it looks good to you. I think 150 is too much. Let's try 100. Yeah, that looks okay. Cool. So we'll go with that for now. All right, so now I'm going to disable the new game, low game, and put back the start button, which is default. And now under the low game, I'm going to add an on-click event, use the title screen canvas, go to a script, and the on-click event will be open load game menu, and that should work. So I am then going to go over here now and drag in the title screen main menu and title screen load menu variables. Otherwise, I'm going to get an error if I try to use that on-click event. I'm going to rename the name here to title screen load menu, just so it matches the name of the variable as I said before. And now if I go in, you can see that these do pop up, and the scroll rect definitely works, but nothing is happening right now. And why is that? Well, there's a few things we haven't set up yet. So first, let's make this scroll rect vertical only, so you can't grab it from left to right, and let's change the movement type to clamped. Now let's go into the World Save Game Manager. We haven't fetched all of our load files, or all the files in our machine when we start the game, so we need to do that. Basically, when you start the game, you need to just preload all of the available character slots if they exist at all. So let's make a comment and say, load all character profiles on device when starting game. And that's really on the nose, so that comment should really clarify any confusion in the future if there is any. I'm going to say private void load all character slots, or profiles, whichever you prefer. And then it's pretty simple. It's very simple, actually. We're just going to use our handy dandy save file writer again. So I'm going to say save file writer equals new save file data writer. And then we're going to just say save file data writer dot save data directory path is equal to application dot persistent data, just like before. And then we're going to say save file data writer dot file name is equal to, and then we pass our character slot. So we check 1 for every character slot we have. So save file name is equal to decide character file name based on character slot, and then we say character slot 01. There we go. And then under that, we just say save file data writer, and then we want to load that file if it exists. So we say character slot 01 is equal to save file data writer dot load save file, and then repeat this for all 10. So I'm going to uncomment this code up here. Now I'm choosing to do it this way because I'm making this static. If you want to make a more dynamic saving and load system that can have like an infinite number of character slots, by all means go for it. I'm just doing 10 because that is the max character amount I believe is in Elden Ring and Dark Souls. So I'm just going to copy and paste this and just change the numbers here. There's just 2 numbers, the character slot and then the character slot for the actual saving. So here we go, all 10 are done, and then I'm going to call this function on the start method after don't destroy on load. That's important. Don't want to call it twice in case there's accidentally 2 of these things in the scene, but there should never be, so you should be fine. Okay, so let's go to the title screen canvas game object here and go to every individual save slot and give it their proper numbers. So the first one is 1, the second one is 2, the third one is 3, yada, 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 right all the way up to 10, and then you'll be good to go. Now, what should happen when we start this momentarily is that if the save slot exists, there's only one at this point in time. We made a save slot last time we played. Basically, it should update the character name to, it should just say character name in lower cases. And if they don't exist, it should disable the game object. So I'm going to start the game here now by pressing play. Going to press start, going to go to load game, and you can see, this one does work. So it says character, and the rest did not disable. So we're going to figure out why in a second. But we know it works because this is actually showing the proper slot. The rest should have disabled, so let's go check out the code in our UI save game slot. And it doesn't disable because we've only made the code for 1 slot. So what we're going to do is, again, you can copy this and paste it and do it for all 10 slots. I'm just going to show you, like, again, you could just copy what I have inside here, the logic, and then you can delete the if statement. And again, if you prefer, you can just make a switch statement here and do it that way, and then switch state the character slot and then do it like that. You can even decouple it more and make a function for each individual slot on the switch statement. But I'm just going to use a chain of if statements here because, again, it's only 10 slots. And once this is here, it's not going to change at all. You might end up adding data to it. And maybe then we can make it a bit more modular in the future. But for now, this is fine. So else if, and all you're doing is changing 2 numbers. That's it. The character slot in the head of the if statement and the character slot that you're actually grabbing from the World Save Game Manager. So I'm not going to do all 10 of these. I'm just going to do a couple, and then I'll snap back when it's done. But I am going to do all 10, just not on video is what I should say. So after you've done that, you can just minimize these here. I'm going to put a comment above each one individually so it's very clear and just a lot more legible, easy to read. I think comments really add that niceness to a lot of the code. If you're just commenting functions and if statements, it just makes things a lot easier and kind of separates them a little bit too, so it's just easier to break things down. All right, that's number 5. Now I'll do number 6, and after that, I will snap back when all 10 are done. So again, change the 2 here to a 6, and then change the 2 here to 6, and that is it. Okay, let's save, and there's all 10. Now, I'm going to save that and go back into the game and test it. Now, again, we should see one profile slot, and the rest should all disable because they don't exist. And yes, that is exactly what happens. Excellent. Cool. Now, let's go ahead and make a way to exit the loading screen, but let's also change this content from middle center to upper center because it's kind of just in the middle of the screen when it should just be starting at the top and then going down, in my opinion. If you like that way better, then keep it middle center. I am going to go ahead now and duplicate one of these buttons, unpack it, and name it to return because it's not going to be a character save slot. It's going to be a button to bring us back to the main menu. I'm going to go inside and delete the save slot icon, and I'm going to basically delete the layout group, but keep one of the text components in there and just change it to my liking. So I'm going to make it the full size of the object. I'm going to change it to return, and I'm going to center the text here, and I'm going to click this anchor to hold Alt at the bottom right icon, and then it becomes the full size of the button. That looks good to me. Let's go ahead and add a button component to this. And what I'm going to do inside the button component is basically go down here and make an on-click event, and then let's go to the title screen canvas, drag that in here. Now we're going to make a function. The function is going to be close load game menu. So much like open load game menu, we have close load game menu. And it's good to put these in functions too, because in the future, let's say you want to play a sound effect when you hit one of these, you can just basically put the sound effect inside this functionality. You don't have to add another on-click event. It's awesome. So I'm going to say select the return button here when we open the load game menu. So let's do that by, let's make some headers first to keep this organized. So I'll make a header for buttons, and then I'll make a header up here for menu objects. Menu objects being like load screen, main menu, character creation menu, etc., etc. Buttons being like new game, load game, you get it. So let's make a button for the return, and I need to say using unityengine.ui or else I can't make a button. So we're going to do that. And I still can't make a button because I have not typed Unity Engine. I've typed unity.ui. Okay, unityengine.ui, there we go. And let's just say return button. And then I am going to come right below that, and I'm going to copy that and say, actually, we're going to change the name of that to load menu return button, just so we can separate the buttons by their menu too, just in case some have similar names. And then I'll call the second one main menu load game button. There we go. So down here, we're just going to say load menu return button dot select, and that's it. And there, down here now on the close load game menu function, we basically just paste this in here. But we want to close the load screen menu and open the main menu. And just out of preference, I like closing a menu first before I open it. So I'm going to put the false statement on top and then open the one after this one is closed. So close and then open. And then we want to select the load menu, or sorry, the main menu load game button, because that is the last button we clicked on to access this menu. And it's always nice when you're brought back to the same button you left on, in my opinion. So main menu load game button dot select. All right, now let's drag in these variables here. So it will be load game button and the return button. So I'm just going to go here now and go to title screen canvas and drag in that variable. And now let's make sure we set up the on click event because I don't believe I did that. So let's go back to the return button. I'm going to disable this load menu first. I'm going to save the scene too, actually. And now come down here to the button and make sure you remove the UI character save slot from the return button, or else that's going to be a problem. And I'm going to change the color here, the highlighted color and the selected color to a red, so it's very easy to see when it's been selected. I'll paste it and keep it the same. And then lastly, the on-click event should be title screen manager, and it should be close load game menu. Now, if I go and press play, and I go down to press start first, then load game, you can see here, boom, it loads a slot, and we can return and then go back to the main menu like so, and we can just keep going back. So in the next video, we're actually going to make it so when we click these load slots, we actually load into the game, load the scene, and take in all of our character data. And we're also going to make it so if you have 10 of these character slots on the screen, then depending on what one you have selected with your controller, the scroll rec will automatically center that. So I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but right now if you were to put 10 of these slots there, you can try it and use a controller. if you go down with the D-pad and the controller, it actually won't center to the one you've selected. So we're going to write a script to do that for us as well. Just a small little polish element. It makes it look a lot nicer. So I suspect in the next video, we'll have this whole system done. And then as we add new things to the game, we can just expand upon it every time we create new logic. So for example, when we add items to the game, we'll save things to our inventory. So we'll come back then and we'll learn how to serialize dictionaries for consumables and stuff. But what I'm trying to say is at the end of the next video, we should have a nice little loop working where we can go into the game, save it, and then load it, and then quit it, and then change profiles, etc., etc. So thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you're here. And if you made it this far and you learned something, please drop a like and leave a comment. It does genuinely help out the series so much. Thank you to my patrons. As always, you are the reason I get to keep doing this, and I love doing this. I will see you guys next week.